It is August the 28th, 1997. We're in Columbus, Ohio, and
Russell McCleary.
Russell McCleary, sorry, of the 92nd. And if you could start at the beginning and just tell us about your childhood and maybe your parents, and what it was like growing up.
Well, as you know, like most guys 76 years old, we don't hear as sharp as you guys do, so you might have to talk a little louder for me. And I came from a family of 12. I was born in Illinois. I was a farmer's son, and as I say, my father was killed in an automobile accident when I was 14, and I was the fifth one in the family. I was the oldest boy. I had four girls, four sisters older than me. And we tried to run the farm and went broke there. I was trying to do the farming, which we still used horses some then, and a tractor on steel wheels, steel lugs. I served in a CCC camp, Civil Conservation Corps, which is for young men from, well, between 37 and 39. I mean the year of 37 and 39. And that was to help provide for your parents, really. Then I learned, we had a regular Army lieutenant that was our commander of our company, which was about 200 people. And we had mostly Army equipment. And we lived like they did in the Army. We had KP and all that, and guard and all that good stuff. We learned to salute an officer. And we also learned about reveille and retreat. We did that like they do in the Army. And then in 1942, I was drafted to the Army, and I was I went through Bloomington, Illinois draft center, induction center, and they sent me to Scott Field. That's at Belleville, Illinois, by St. Louis. I was there for about 2 weeks, and I was with three buddies that had started out with me, but they split us up, and they sent me to Camp Campbell, Kentucky. I got there in October of 1942. I don't remember the exact date that I got there. You know, the day, but it was in October. And that's where the 12th Armored Division was built. And we trained there. After 6 weeks basic training, I got a 10-day furlough. And then after about a year, the training there, well, we went to Tennessee maneuvers for 6 weeks, I believe. And of course, we had to live in the field all them 6 weeks. And then best train ride I ever had in my life. We boarded a plane, a train close to Bowling Green, Kentucky, someplace in there, I don't remember. But it was damp and cold. It was in the fall of the year. It's the September, October. It had to be in October. that would have been 43. And we got on that train. Well, it was nice and warm in there. And I didn't care if I ever got off. First time I'd been warm for 6 weeks. And so we wound up at Abilene, Texas, Camp Barkley. And it was quite a letdown from Camp Campbell. Abilene, Texas, we had the Quonset huts. We're in Camp Campbell. We had the big white dropboard siding 2-story barracks, and they were heated with a big coal furnace at one end, and we had on the first floor at one end was the showers and the toilets and the urinals and all, and then at Abilene, Texas, we had a separate building which it never did get too cold there though. But that was kind of a handicap, you know, for us guys that was used to everything. Then we trained in Texas for a full year. And I never seen so much sand and sagebush and armadillos. First time I'd ever seen one in my life. But the Texas people were real good to us. I mean, you know, they, for being, you know, a big army camp, you know, and usually soldiers, a bunch of them, you know, they kind of look down on you, but the Texas people treat us good. And well, from there, we went through New York, of course, and then past the Statue of Liberty, and for 21 days, we were in a big convoy. The whole 12th Armored Division was in this convoy. We had all of our military equipment, our tanks, armored cars, guns, and everything that we used. We had drawn all that equipment when they sent us to Abilene, Camp Barkley. We had brought all that equipment new. We trained in it there for about a year, and then that's the same equipment we took into combat. And we landed at Liverpool, England, and that was in 44. I ain't good on these dates because after over 50 years, well, the dates kind of slip, you know, and I wasn't exactly interested in the dates then, you know. But and then we had to go get our equipment. See, it had been all packed for overseas shipment, and we had to clean all of our guns, and we had to get our vehicles combat ready and all of that. And then when we got all that done, well, we was building, while we was doing this, we was building it in big tents on what they called Windmill Hill. And that was by close to Liverpool, someplace in England. But anyhow, when we got all of our equipment ready, got it combat ready, and we was ready to go, well, we crossed the English Channel on LSDs, and we landed in Le Havre, France, and that was just, I don't remember the exact date that was, but that was shot up real bad. That was after, you know, that's where part of the invasion was, I think. And there were sunken ships and everything in the English Channel. but we landed at night, and these LSTs just run up to the bank as far as they could go and drop the door, you know, and the armored car that I drove in combat, I drove it off of that. And it was a dark, cloudy night, and it was scary, really. You know, you didn't know where you was going. You couldn't see good, and we had these little markers, combat markers. That's all the lights that was on them vehicles, and you couldn't see them. You know, from 20 feet away, you couldn't hardly see them. You know, just and taking these vehicles up those bank, you know, the bank was soft and all that, and some of them were getting stuck, and a lot of hollering and shouting, and like I say, you couldn't turn on bright lights so you could see what you was doing. But we got up over that, and we started in combat. I mean, we started in a convoy. After we got assembled, after we regrouped and assembled, after, of course, there was no fighting there when we was landed there, you know, they had always moved on. And we got into southern France, and I don't remember this before in southern France, but we came through Alsace-Lorraine area, and one evening we was moving along, and we run into the Germans. That's then they started throwing artillery at us and all this stuff and the other, and that's how I remember getting into this stuff. And like I say, it's been over 50 years ago, and you know, I remember all this stuff, but my memory ain't as good as it was back then. And a lot of it I'd like to forget. You know, I don't even want to remember some of it. But, I lost some buddies. The 92nd wasn't hit like the infantry, and I think the 43rd Tank Battalion, I believe, lost more people than the other tank battalions did. But the infantry battalions, they got hit the hardest because, you know, they were up there with the tanks all the time, you know, and on foot. They moved them in half tracks, but a lot of times, you know, they were on foot and wasn't riding in their vehicles, you know, which they even did the 92nd Cavalry that way. But the cavalry, you know, were used for, 92nd Recon was reconnaissance we had light vehicles that we could move faster with. I was an armored car driver, an M8 armored car driver, and I don't know if you ever seen one, but if I was on good hard ground, even going cross country, I could get that going 50, 60 miles an hour sometimes, you know. It would, and on a good highway, that thing would run, you know, up like sometimes you get up 70 miles an hour on a good highway if you had, and they weighed 8.5 tons, and it took a while to get them rolling, but they had a six-cylinder, a six-cylinder Hercules engine, 110 horsepower. That wasn't 110 cubic inches, that was 110 horsepower, which I don't know, 110 cubic inches isn't, I don't know what horsepower that'd be, about 24 or something like that, I think. But anyhow, we lived, sometimes we would move Germans out of houses if we got a chance to hold up, you know, for a while. And we would take over so many houses, but we wasn't supposed to hurt the German civilian people, you know. If they had guns or anything, we'd take it, you know, we was allowed to take the guns, but we weren't allowed, you know, just to go in and shoot any German. And the German civilian people was scared naturally when, you know, when, like if we come into a town and one time we went, I know we went into, that was toward the end of the war, our troop went right through an Air Force base that the Germans didn't have enough enough fuel to get the planes off the ground. There was a few, you know, like, I don't know, we caught them by surprise too, I think, but there was 3 or 4 of the planes tried to take off and they knocked them out before they ever got off the ground, you know. And we got some planes and, you know, that wasn't even touched. And another time toward the end of the war, I had some pictures that I've had for years, and I've replaced them of a bunch of Jews that we helped liberate. The 12th Armored Division went through there and liberated. Well, the 92nd had a big part to do with that. And I remember some of these Jewish people would cut holes through the fences so they could get out. Some of them crawled out and didn't get very far. They died, you know, they was so weak and everything. They just, you know, it seemed like that they wanted to get out of that place so bad that they had enough strength to crawl through a hole in the fence and die, you know, instead of dying. And it was a filthy place that, you know, that you would have to live in. I don't know how they, and some of them wasn't in too bad a shape. I know one time our cooks caught up to us and we was having a hot meal, and they didn't realize at the time, but they set it up pretty close to where these Jews was, you know, that we'd just liberated. And of course they were hungry. The guys was giving them food and stuff, but you know, they had lived in there. You was almost afraid for if they wanted to even kiss your clothes, you know. They was so glad to see us and stuff that you was almost afraid to have them touch you. They were so dirty and stuff, you know, living in that no sanitary conditions at all in those places. One time, I don't remember dates or anything, but one time my armored car, which consists of 4 people, I was the driver, then we had a car commander. I had the same sergeant all the way through. Well, not all the way through from Campbell, but I got him in Barclay. And his name is John DeNike, Sergeant John DeNike. He was a buck sergeant. He was from the state of New York. I found out in the past couple of years that he's dead now. He died in 86. But we took training together and stuff, and we were very close. We started out, John DeKnight was our sergeant. He was the car commander, and I was the driver, and Willard Meduse was CW radio operator, and he sat right beside the driver, and he was also my assistant driver. And the gunner was a fellow by the name of John Kramer. I forget what state he was from. But one time they took, I call it my armored car because I was the driver, took my armored car and put us with the French First Army as liaison between the 12th Armored Division and the French First Army. So we had to travel with their headquarters, which there was a colonel in charge. That was in charge of that First Army. Anyhow, that's who we was under. He couldn't speak any English, so we couldn't understand him. But I know we was with them for 10 days, and I tell you that was. I was more scared of the French than I was the Germans, because I knew where the Germans was at, and we was with the French, and they was using our vehicles and everything. They would even used our uniforms. I don't know how all them Frenchmen kept from getting killed, because they didn't. They was the worst fighters I ever seen. They couldn't drive an armored car. I could drive rings around them. Not knocking the French people. I mean, you know, I was just. They run things so much different than the Americans run our army that I couldn't believe it. I was scared to death, and so was all four of us. But this colonel, this French colonel, he wanted us to send a message back on the radio to the 12th Armored Division. And he had an interpreter with him and was telling my sergeant what to do. So the sergeant was telling our CW radio operator so he could send it in code, you know. And this colonel punched his interpreter and said, what's he doing? What's he taking so long? You know. So he told the sergeant, said, Colonel wants to know what's taking so long. And well, he said, Sergeant explained to him, we got to send this in code. So he told that colonel told him, he said, well, tell him, you know, just talk on that set there. He said, Germans don't understand English anyhow. They don't understand what the Americans are saying. And so the sergeant told him, said, well, I'm sorry, sir, but he said, my order is to send it in code. So that was another thing that scared me. But we finally got through that, and I was lucky. You know, sometimes now we lost a company commander. We lost 2 company commanders in our troop. And the first one's name was Captain McCleary. And we went into a town to scout it, and we left all of our vehicles. We set up a CP, and we left all of our vehicles there. We dismounted and went on foot like the foot infantry does, you know. And we went up into this town, And the Germans knew we were there, you know, they must have spotted us, but it was at night, you know, but they probably spotted us in the daytime, but they would do this a lot. They'd put up these flares and they'd come down in a parachute, you know, and these flares would be, and boy, they was bright, you know, just, but the secret was, if you happened to be standing up and one of them flares, you know, one often come floating down, you didn't want to move, just stand stock still. Because anything that moved, you could see it, you know. If you didn't move, well, unless you were real close, you know, well, you couldn't tell if it was a fence post or something like that. But, and then they was throwing what we called, well, we called them tree bombs, but these bombs would explode before they hit the ground, you know, as artillery. Well, they was, and there was a bunch of trees on, and we on each side of a road that went into this town, and we had a column on each side of the road going dismounted, you know, and crawling through and these bombs would come in and they would hit just about the time they got some treetops. You didn't only have to worry about the shrapnel. Tree limbs would come down. Sometimes they was good size, you know, they get hurt from that. But the first dead man I ever seen, I mean, you know, while we was in combat, that same night I was crawling along and one of them tree burst had just went off, and one of my friends, his name was Karosky, and he said it took his leg off, but he just had a little well, a piece of hot shrapnel went. It was in cold weather, and we had on these. It was something like a snowmobile suit, only it was olive drab army color, you know. We call them combat suits. You know, you pull the pants up and then it had a jacket you put on, and then you could put on a lot of clothes underneath them too. He had on a lot of clothes, and it went right through, and it put a big gash in his leg back here, but it didn't hurt it. You know, it wasn't that serious really, but he thought it, and that burns, you know, just like touching hot metal that's been pulled out of a fire. And of course our medic took care of him, took him back, and I was crawling on, and I crawled over a guy, the dead man. That was the first dead man. But there had been another outfit up ahead of us, and they had to leave this guy. I didn't know him. And but we went on into this town, and there was a patrol. It was, well, some of us on one side of the street and some on the other side of the street, and there was a railroad that went across, and we knew there was some Germans on the other side of the railroad, but that's what we was up there to check out. And we found out while we was in there, which B Troop was about almost 200 men. There was about 5,000 Germans and all kinds of equipment on it, you know, that we found out that was in there. So we started trying to get out of there. Well, first the patrol started coming through on this one street where we was, and me and a friend of mine named Willard Meduse. He was my assistant driver. We was kind of up on a hill. Oh, I can't explain. I don't even want it to look like. It's in the dark. We went up there in the dark. But anyhow, we was laying up there, we heard one of our guys holler, halt, you know, and somebody said handy hole, and then, boy, some small arm fighters we knew, that we heard one of them German burp guns. We called them a burp gun. It was similar to our Army Thompson machine gun, if you know what that is. The only thing, it was a 31 caliber, where ours is a 45. And that thing, the reason we called it a burp gun, it would just, it fired so fast, it just sounded like somebody let a big burp or something, you know, if they just let off a little burst. But anyhow, and then it got real deathly quiet. You couldn't hear anything, you know, and we laid there, and I don't know what time of the night it was, and we started getting cold because we wasn't moving around. I had been, well, when that was going on, I broke out in a sweat and everything, you know, and so finally I says to him, do you want to go down there and check and see if anybody's still living, or you want me to go down there? One of us got to stay up here, you know, see if nobody comes across here or anything. But anyhow, finally, somebody come after us, and then we started back out there, and the Germans had put up some wire and stuff across behind us, and our company commander got killed. And then, one of the lieutenants was supposed to take over, but anyhow, me and Meduse took 17 Germans back, prisoners, back to our CP, and while we was taking them back, well, I thought maybe we'd get to stay back there, but they took our prisoners. There was a lieutenant back there. He told us to go back up, so we went back up. That's when we found out our company commander got killed. And it was getting close to daylight, and I guess the last thing that our company commander had told anybody was, we got to get out of here before daylight. So we got out of there finally and went back. I don't know where we went back to, but we didn't. I remember one time we was watching. We had been up looking for routes and stuff, you know, to get the tanks and stuff through on bridges and all this and stuff. And anyhow, we got pulled back, and the tanks and the infantry went ahead of us. I remember these tanks was up there in a big open field. Oh, I don't know how big this field was. It was probably 40 acres probably or so, you know, but no, I mean, it was open, 40 acres or so open of it is what I mean. Bare, like, you know, you can see all the way like in this room and stuff. And it was just like in the movies. And the infantry was, I don't know what infantry companies, but I don't know which one of our tank companies, 4th Armored Division people though. And they were moving up, these medium tanks would move up slow and stop, and boy, these shells was landing all around them. And this infantry was on foot, and they was trying to use the tanks for protection. And there was Germans that was in foxholes and stuff. That's the reason they had to have our dismounted infantry up there with them. And we'd seen one of our tanks get hit. And, you know, it was unreal. And then I was standing, I'd crawled up out of the armored car and was standing straight up, you know, watching. And a tank, an armored, well, you know, one of the Germans must have spotted us, you know, back behind, so they opened up with us with an anti-tank gun. And a shell whistled. Well, I heard that whistle over my head. I tell you, I jumped without even thinking. I jumped down and turned around and caught my helmet. I jumped right off from under my helmet, you know, and turned around and caught it. And they laid another shell across while my crew was still in the armored car. I was the only one that was out, and I'd crawled out, and of course the sergeant and the gunner was up in the turret. Of course, they could see pretty good, and Meduse was, I think he was sending a message on the radio, but of course he was, and the sergeant started hollering at me, "Hey, we got to move this armored car, get back in." And Meduse, by that time, hollered and said, "You guide me, Russ, I'll drive it." And so, you know, you don't want to, the back of a tank or one of them armored cars, any of that was, if you turn around to get the back end, it's the bullets are crease, you know, you get your engine, they'll come right in, you know, knock you out, right? So he said, you guide me. Well, you can't see where you're going when you're backing up. So you know, we're used to doing this, you know, steering a guy. And he backed it, and I run in front of, you know, I run in front of him, and and everybody was moving as fast as they could. Of course, he was getting away from me. I couldn't run that fast. It was moving, you know, he had it. And so there was a railroad back there, and there was a viaduct where but it ain't like railroads and viaducts today, and the trains wasn't near that, you know. But anyhow, we got on the other side of that railroad, and then we were back and later on he got killed. Meduse, the one that was driving he was like a brother to me. You know what? One night we had to go on dismounted patrol again. And so Meduse and McCleary, they called them the 2M boys, you know, me and Meduse. And, you know, I was the oldest one in that armored car. I was 23 years old. Tonight, our sergeant was 20, 21, something like that. He's dead now. And the gunner was up in there that we called him the brain. He was quite a guy. But we didn't include him in this. If we went on patrol, the three of us had to go together at night, you know, night patrol. You'd go on foot. And if one of us was picked for patrol, the other two automatically had to go along. And we went on a few of them patrols, and then, well, this one day in the daytime, we hit German resistance, and so the captain gave order for us to everybody dismount but the driver and the gunner, and you move along, the other two like foot infantry. And of course, Meduse had to get out, and I said, you drive and I'll go. And he said, no. He started to get out, and he said, oh, my aching back. I never will forget. He said, he was, and I said, oh, you drive, I'll go. He said, no, you're the driver, you drive. He said, I'm supposed to get out. Of course, the sergeant had to go too. That sergeant wasn't afraid of anything. And anyhow, the sergeant said, no, Mac, you stay in the armored car. I said, Bill Meduse will go. His name was Willard, but we called him Bill. And Bill got killed, Meduse. And tonight he seen him get hit, and we tried to, we couldn't get through there. We had to back up, so tonight said, well, we're going to go up and get him. And of course, me and Bill tonight, we'd always, if one went, the other one went. So we had to go on foot. We went up in a ways, and our artillery at this time, by this time our artillery is just blasting that hillside, and it was like a gully. It wasn't really a road, but it was just like a gully that went up that. We could take tanks up through there if we get up through there. But they were dug in, the Germans was all dug in. And we went up in there a ways, and then there was 4 or 5 other guys that went with us, because we lost 6 men in there that day. We couldn't get, and we captured some Germans, so we finally made these Germans go up and bring our dead guys back. The Germans, the other Germans was trying to kill these Germans we sent up there. So we would kill them if they didn't go up there, and they had to keep hid from their own side, but shoot them. They knew that they was Germans, that they was getting our wounded and dead out for us, see. And they got Meduse out. He was already dead. And then I got a replacement for him. I've got a picture of the replacement if you want to see him, but he got killed too. Same way. We'd hit a Paladin was the replacement's name, Edward Paladin. And it got real close to him. He was a real likable fellow. About 3 months later, no, it wasn't that long. About 2 months later, he got killed. We'd run into a bunch of these Hitler Youth, they call them, young. It might take them too long.
No,
we were running into a bunch of these Hitler Youth people, and they was like from 11 through 16 or something like that. And Powell didn't come back. We were moving up the armored car and the gunner stayed in it because, you know, he was after it. And we had a 37 millimeter cannon and a 50 caliber machine gun up on the turret on the skate ring that would, you know, we could take it all the way around. It was good for anti-aircraft too. And then there was a 30 caliber machine gun mounted beside that 37 millimeter. And that's the reason they kept the gunner in there, see, because he was firing, especially the machine guns. But Paladin had been out, and he was supposed to stay close to my armored car. And he come back once, and I told him, I said, Ed, what are you getting so far away from us for? Of course, you know, we weren't, our whole troop was there, you know. And I said, hang around a little bit closer, you know, you ain't, and he was telling me about, you know, he got a couple of these little kids out of the hole. He said they was crying like babies, you know. He said, I just reached down and jerked one out of the hole. And he said, little devil had hand grenades. And, well, of course, they had rifles, too. I said, you watch them guys. And he went back, and I don't know what happened, but he got away from my armored car. So, I mean, you know, you couldn't move up fast. You might get on a mine or whatever, you know. They was all just, you know. But anyhow, somebody come over my armored car and told me that Paladin had just got killed. And then I found out later that he had went up to a hole, and there was one of them kids in there, and he was crying, you know, he was laying down in that foxhole crying. And so they said, one of them said, Paladin just left him and walked on, and that kid raised up and shot him in the back and killed him. And of course I forget now, it was one of our guys, he killed that kid, but he had already killed Paladin. And then our company commander, his voice came over the radios. If they don't come out of that hole, kill them. He said they're fighting like, I don't know, we lost some more guys that day. But, so we got quite a few of those kids as, you know, as prisoners. And well, these are some of the things that stick with me, you know. The 12th Armored Division was only in actual combat about 6 months, I guess. I don't remember just how long we were. And the 92nd didn't see as much action, what I mean right on the front lines, like, you know, the tanks and the infantry. But the 92nd had to move, hit and run, and try to find routes and, you know, bridges that we could cross and, you know, stuff like that. We lost 2 company commanders. Lieutenant Max was our company commander for a short while, and he got killed. And we lost, we had a fellow by the name of Looky Likens. Well, I don't know what his first name is. He was our last company commander. I'm hoping he'll be here. I don't know if he's here yet or not, but I was thinking he was going to be here. But I met him in St. Louis 2 years ago. That's the first time I had seen him since 1945, about September 1945. course, he didn't know me, I didn't know him, but he didn't even remember my name. Of course, I remember him. He was a company commander. We had him a short while, till the end of the war, until we disbanded. One experience that I had nothing to do with the war, or maybe it did. After the Germans had surrendered, well, we were Heidenheim, Germany. Well, we got pulled into Heidenheim, Germany, just when the Germans surrendered. And I think, well, the 12th Armored Division was all in that area around there from then on. But I was, the 92nd was right in Heidenheim, and we were doing a lot of taking care of displaced persons and all that. We were, and B Troop had, that was about the troop I was in, B Troop had some displaced persons that was, you know, like families. There was Polish and Russian, some of them, a few of them was Russian, and I don't know what other countries that had been there as slave labor. And some of them had been there so many years, they had families. They'd got married and had families, you know. And there was a big German SS troopers camp there, and we had these families there, and we was guarding the main gates. It was more or less just, we'd tell them, you know, you're supposed to stay in there. You ain't supposed to go out, you know, that our orders that to not let you out. We had loaded guns, but we wouldn't have shot one of them people for nothing, you know. But, you know, you'd just tell them, no, we ain't supposed to let you out, you know. And, of course, the Germans wasn't about, well, they didn't want to go in there. They'd get killed if they did go in there. But we were guarding them. They would take, on the gate that I was helping guard, there was 2 guards on the gate. Well, we'd drive a Jeep out, and 2 guys that was out there, they'd take the Jeep and go back. No, wait a minute, there was 4. Anyhow, 4 of us would go out in the Jeep. 2 would get off, and the other 2 would take the Jeep down there. Them 2 would get on, and them 2, they'd take the Jeep back. Well, anyhow, we went out there the Jeep come out and picked us up. That's the way it was. And we got in, and we were starting to go back. And just got away from that little ways, and the guy that was driving the Jeep was a regular Jeep driver during combat, you know. He was a friend of mine. His name was Russell Weaver. Had just a little old gravel trail, and he turned that Jeep over. He lost control of it. He was going too fast, lost control of it, and he put 3 of us in the hospital. He's the only one that didn't get in the hospital. And anyhow, I had this leg in a cast all the way up, and I laid in a tent hospital this was only a week after the Germans had surrendered. So they still had these tent hospitals up where they had wounded soldiers, you know, that had been wounded from the war. They hadn't moved them back to the regular hospital yet. So I laid in there for 6 days, then a plane come in, first plane ride, first time I'd ever been on a plane in my life. It was one of them old C-47 cargo planes. Twin engines, and they took me back to Nancy, France, to hospital, and I spent time in there till I got out, and then they had me out and training therapy, you know, like for therapy training and all that. You know, I started training outside, and we were living in tents then. And it was I found out it's a reputable depot. And they would send, when people got ready to fight, Japs were still fighting then. Well, they'd send you, you know, as replacements. And here I was one of them, and they was getting ready. They would send you out, you know, if they needed replacements. One day I seen a 12th Armored Division 6x6 truck come pulling in there, and he had 92nd headquarters. So I get right over there and start talking to him. It was about 3:30 in the afternoon. And I said, you from the 92nd? He said, yeah. I said, you know where B Troop headquarters is? And he said, yeah. He said, I do. I got to go right by there. He said, I'm picking up some guys to take back. I said, you got my name on that roster? And he said, no. I said, will you take me? He said, you get your stuff. And he said, this truck is leaving in 10 minutes. Well, I had to run like probably 100 yards to get to the tent that I was sleeping in. And I had all my belongings in a barracks bag. I run and I grabbed that barracks bag, and you know, that doggone truck started pulling away, and the guys started hollering for me, and one of them reached down and got my barracks bag, and two of them got hold of my hand and pulled me up over the side. I bet he was going 30 miles an hour when they pulled me. He said he was leaving in 10 minutes, and he meant it. And so it took me right to Troop B headquarters, our CP. I went in, and our First Sergeant Archambault was his name, looked up and he said, where'd you come from? I said, I just got off that truck that just left. He said, well, you ain't supposed to be here. And I said, you mean I don't belong here anymore? Well, yeah, he said, I'm just surprised to see you. He said, he told me where to go, you know, and get some stuff, get some bed clothes and go to sleep, you know, where I was going to be billeted. And it was, you know, like 8 or 9 o'clock. It was getting dark, but it was, you know, early in the, what was it, about August, I believe, July or August. And so about 3 days later, he comes over where I'm at, and he says, you know, you're AWOL from the hospital. I said, oh, what do we do now? And he said, that's all right, I took care of it. But he said, you know, if you hadn't have come back the way you did, you'd have got sent to Japan. I knew that. And if I'm going to have to fight anybody, I'm going to be with people that I know and used to fighting with. You know, I didn't want to get... I had one time we were... this is just, for instance, one time we was pinned down. It was raining and stuff, and I was trying to put chains on my armored car because when you're out in soft ground, you know, them things are heavy, and if you can, as long as you can keep moving, you might get through. But if you stop, boy, they sink down right now, and you can't get her moving again. And we had a couple of Jeeps that was cut off up the front of our, one of them had been knocked out, and the guys were still up there, and we couldn't get them back, and one guy had got killed, and he was trying to crawl back. His name was Peroni. And anyhow, there's this young kid, he'd had 6 weeks basic training, and he'd been with us about a week. He'd had 6 weeks basic training, and they sent him up the front lines with us to fight. And this kid, he was a tall, slim kid. I don't remember what his name was, and he was 19 years old. And Sergeant Borum come over, and he called him by name and told him, he said, go up there and help them guys. They've got some of our people, you know, pinned down up there, and they can't get back. He said, well, I was helping Mac with putting these chains on. He said, well, Mac can do that by himself. You go on. And the kid started leaving. He said, "Oh, Sergeant, should I take my gun?" And Sergeant said, "It'd be a good idea." And I guess I've been talking long enough. It don't make sense what I say anyhow. So, like I say, I can't remember names and places, and
That's fine.
stuff comes and goes. Some stuff comes to mind, but I read articles in the Hellcat News that some people that write, I know some of these people. I mean, I knew them back then, and they can tell about stuff that went on and places we was and everything, and day to day how it happened and everything. I can't do that. I can't.
I bet they look up some of those dates. And stuff.
They might do that too, but I never study that or anything. I just tell from memory. Just like one time, I just remember stuff. I don't know what day it happened or what, but another incident I remember one time that we had a sergeant by the name of Calderon. He was a nice fellow. And, like when something would happen, well, then if we got a chance to regroup and maybe stay overnight and get relaxed a little something, we'd be telling about, something that happened. What was you doing when you did this or that, Well, we had been holed up in a town, and of course, villages over there. We'd been holed up in this villages, and I know we had my armored car set up by an old barn, and sometimes I'd stay in the armored car, or sometimes I'd dig a foxhole and get in the foxhole. Maybe it'd be right side the armored car, You had to try to keep them guessing, But anyhow, before daylight the next morning, I'd been sitting in the armored car. I was supposed to be on guard, which I was, And then somebody come along and said, "You see anything out there?" And I said, "Yeah, it looks to me like somebody's moving around out there. It was starting to, break day a little bit." And then the word come back that the Germans had moved in, was setting up mortars and stuff, out there. And so our captain, he got us all together. He said, so many men. He come by and told each sergeant, get so many guys, we're gonna. And so we beat the Germans to the punch before they could get all set up. We went out on foot. And we, they did too, I think, but I was on foot. But anyhow, we was coming back. There was a railroad over there, and the Germans, we chased them back to that railroad, pushed them back. They killed a few of them, but not very many. But there was a lot of fire and small arms fire going on, And then it quieted down, and so the captain gave us order to retreat and come back to, to where we were set up. And I don't know if it's 3 or 4 of us walking along, but this Sergeant Calderon, I knew him well. And I was walking pretty close to him, and boy, after a while, bleep, boy, that was a rifle. After a while, another, and there was a little ditch along. It wasn't very deep. Boy, I dove in that head first and started crawling as fast as I could on my hands and knees down that ditch. And I heard him let out a yell, and he'd come in behind me. And we got back. He took his helmet off and showed us, and there's a bullet that went right through the top of his helmet. It had pierced it a little bit, but you know, it hit the top and kind of ricocheted off. But there was enough hole there he could stick his finger through. And he said, boy, I guess that one didn't have my number, you know. And 2 days later, he was pinned down, and the Germans was throwing those, what we call a hand grenade, we call them potato masher, what they had. And he was down in a ditch. I wasn't there. I was close there, but I mean, I don't know what position he was in and stuff. And they said that the Germans threw a hand grenade in there, and he picked it up and threw it back. It went off. Well, they claimed that maybe that there was, you know, the guys that was actually seen this happen said the Germans and Calderon was probably about 50 feet from them where they could throw that for, you know. And they threw another hand grenade in there, and he picked it up, was going to throw it back and explode and killed him. That was about 2 days after he had to hold his helmet, you know. I seen another guy one time. We were trying to take a bridge, our company, and we had, they'd made it a task, but they called us a task force. Made up with, you know, just with the B troop. And they give us 2 medium tanks. And these 2 medium tanks, they would usually, you know, they would come along somewhere in our column. Maybe they was at the middle of the column, maybe they was at the back of the column, but they couldn't move as fast as armored cars and jeeps, you know. And but this one day they wanted us to take this bridge of the railroad. It was across the river. I don't remember what the name of the river was. But we saved the bridge. I mean, but they had the Germans had anti-aircraft guns set up. They had 7 positions of German air 20 millimeter anti-aircraft guns. And they started firing on us. Well, armored cars, you know, they had to hit you, just about hit you in the back for one of them 20 millimeters to pierce it. But anyhow, they opened up on us, and so we were supposed to retreat back to the town that we just came from, but the B troop was the only one actually that was up there, I guess. And so some of our jeeps, you know, boy, those 20 millimeters, they blow a guy right out of a jeep. They got no protection at all sitting there, you know. And of course they run back and try to use the armored car for protection, you know. And these jeeps that was up ahead of us, they was turned around, and boy, they was coming back fast. And we had a second lieutenant. I ain't going to mention his name because I don't want anybody. I mean, I would. Vince, I'm talking like this. Sometimes he might hear say that, but he left. He was a platoon leader, not a platoon sergeant. He was a platoon leader, and he just left his platoon. I seen an armored car, a jeep. This jeep come running past there. They would turn around. Boy, they was getting out of there. And this lieutenant run and jumped right in that jeep, and I bet that jeep would run 25 miles an hour. He looked like a stunt man. You know, actually, when you stop to think about it, looked like a stunt, some kind of a stunt. That had been practiced, you know, and a stunt man do something like that. He just, well, we got rid of him after that. I mean, we transferred him out. We had a company meeting, the guys did. But anyhow, at that same time, one of our guys jumped out of a Jeep, lost his helmet, went down over a bank, come back over that bank and picked his helmet up, bullets flying all over, picked his helmet up, put it back on his head and go back down over the bank again. He never remembered doing that. We told him about it. I sat right there and seen him do it. I was in my armored car. I was trying to get it turned around, which finally, my sergeant, you can't see behind you, and my sergeant, he got out, and he was out there, bullets flying around, and giving me the motions so I could turn that thing around. Then I waited for him to jump back on, and we had a half track. That's a personnel carrier. You guys know what a half track? Okay, you know these. And it was pulling a two-wheel trailer, one of these, and it was loaded with ammunition, for all kinds of ammunition for our guns. Which the biggest gun we had is a 37 millimeter, like I told you, cannon. But 50 caliber machine guns and 30 calibers, and all of our rifles, all was 30 calibers, And that was all loaded with our ammunition. And that half track was trying to turn around, and they knocked it out. So the guys got out of it. They got out and started running. They got on, the rest of us was picking them up, as they went by. And they blew that up. They kept shooting at it. The Germans kept shooting at it. They blew that up. And I'm telling you, I bet you could have set a house. It made a hole in the ground. Man, I'm telling you, it just jarred the earth whenever that went off. Of course, I've heard a lot of explosions, but I was surprised that, that they blowing up that. I think I've talked long enough. I'm sure you're getting sick of hearing me, and I can't think of towns and dates and stuff anyhow.
Yeah. Do you remember anything that happened at Colmar?
At Colmar? Yeah, I do. And one of our tank battalions, the Germans was using some of our own tanks shooting back at us. They really got it there. But later on, I guess, later on we captured, got what tanks it was, we got it all back, I guess, later on. But, yeah, that was, see, the only thing that most of the 92nd wasn't really involved in that thing at Colmar. I would call that the Second Battle of Bulge. That's what I would call it, but, like I say, the infantry and the tank divisions, battalions are the ones that really was in that, and they can tell you.
So it's the same thing with Herlisheim?
Yeah, Herlisheim is about the same. We was, like I say, we hit and run, in the cavalry.
So you guys weren't as active in the big battles you were kind of doing?
Yeah, we wasn't really. Now, every once in a while, one of our troops got they got caught right in something like that, or they was attached to somebody that got caught in it, see. But as a whole, the 90 seconds, you know, was more or less, well, I'm sure that you guys have probably got a list of names of the 12th Armored Division that was killed in action and missing, and you can see the tanks and the infantries, you know, like the engineers and the medics, and well, the 92nd lost more than the Signal Corps and the engineers and the medics did, you know. But even I know medics that got killed. Them medics that come up there, they wasn't even allowed to carry a gun. You know, some of them did, but actually they wasn't supposed to carry a gun, and they got killed the same as everybody else did every once in a while, you know. But if I could remember some towns and names of the towns and remember some of the dates and stuff, I probably know something about some of the stuff you want to know, but I don't even.
No, that's what you told us is great. That's what we want to know. That's super. I'd ask one thing. Do you have any more memories of the camps, Camp Barkley?
Of Camp Barkley and Camp Campbell.
Or Tennessee maneuvers? Any of that stuff you remember?
Well, yeah, Tennessee maneuvers, I don't know. There was one time, I don't know, there was, well, some funny things happened and stuff, but actually I can't tell you, you know, much of anything that's really important about it. The only thing I can tell you, I was there.
You said some funny things happened?
Pardon?
You said some funny things happened?
Yeah, every once in a while something would funny has happened. We had, well, there was a sergeant one time. He was, well, he wasn't the kind of sergeant that you really liked, you know, and he come up on some guys and he was telling them how he had blew them up, you know, assimilated, you know, like if you was in combat, how they'd have been blown up and stuff. And while he was telling that, well, somebody else come up behind him, and when they finished talking, and he turned around, and they said, well, what do you think would have happened to you? Well, you explain that to them. and I won't mention the name there, because that sergeant might come around sometime and hear it, and I'd hate for him to hear me mention his name. And Camp Barkley, like I say, the most I remember about that is the sand and the sagebrush. But of course, you know, we were supposed to, we wasn't supposed to go tear up a bunch of good lands, you know. And so naturally, and then that's good Army training to have you in a rough terrain, you know, the rougher the terrain, that's, because you never know what you get into, you know, in the fighting. And, but I remember one time it snowed one night in the wintertime when we was there. I don't think they ever have much snow there, I believe, do they? You guys both are there, aren't you?
Yeah, no, it's so much.
One time it snowed, and like it started snowing, you know, early, and about 9 o'clock or 9:30 at night. Well, some of the young children had went to bed, you know, like school age or younger, and people got them up to see the snow, to play in the snow. And it covered the ground, you know, it was probably an inch or so. About noon the next day it was going, sun come out, and and I do remember it getting so hot there sometime in the summertime, you just felt like, you know, you didn't have any pep at all. You go outside, you know, and that hot sun hits you, you just felt like you didn't want to move. But I like Texas pretty good. Now, I tell my wife, now if we ever got rich enough, we live in Illinois, you know, we're in the north central part of Illinois. And I could tell you what the weather's like, you know, 1 hour, the next hour it's probably changed. And, you know, it might have cooled off 10 degrees or warmed up 10 degrees, or it might be rain, or you know, but I told her, I said, if me and you ever get rich enough to retire, we're not going to Florida, we're not going to California, we're going to Texas. And we're going to go over the southern part of Texas. But you know, I have been around Fort Worth and Dallas. I was, well, the last time I was at Fort Worth and Dallas was 86, I believe, 85 or 86. And you know, it's pretty nice through there, but it's a lot warmer than it is, you know, in Illinois. But, and the wind blows a lot, you know, but it blows a lot in Illinois too. So, but I like Texas pretty good. Certain part of Texas, they got nice green grass and stuff, you know, and but this place here is all right, but I've been lost ever since I got here. Now, I'm more used to Kentucky and Tennessee and Missouri and Indiana and Iowa, you know, well, Wisconsin. But Florida, I don't care for Florida much. I like, you know, just go through there to see the sights and move on.
No, we appreciate it, Russell.
Yeah.
I think
We
you
cut
guys
you